Hey there, everybody. A little bit different video today. I thought I would give you my first impressions of the Bassi Bikes Belmont. I just did my first kind of real ride with it today, and while my impressions are fresh, I thought I would make this video one for future reference. I can refer back to this myself when I do the full review, because I feel like it's usually after this first or second rides where you get the strongest impressions. And also, because we're going to be in Dresden filming the bespoke show, I just wanted to record something else. If you're not familiar with this bike, it's a collaboration between a bike shop called Keystone Bikes and the Canadian brand Bassi Bikes. One of their most popular models is the Hogsback. This is not that. This is the Belmont. They pitched this bike as kind of an all-road commuter slash kind of randonneuring style bike. This is the size small, and it's outfitted with some 27.5 by 1.9 tires. These are Volumes by Simworks. I'm just going to give you guys a quick tour of the frame here. It is a steel frame and steel fork, and just really nicely outfitted and well thought out. It's got all the mounts you could ask for. Mid-blade fork mounts. You can put a fender and rack. On the back here, there are mounts for rack stays at the top, mid-fork, as well as down here. Although the bike has classic stylings, it has modern standards. So through axle, it's set up with a microshift sword rear derailleur, and it's running, and it has a 9-speed drivetrain with a very awesome Grotach equal brake. Other unique things is this crankset. This is Bassi's own, and it's a 4634. Personally, a little bit higher than I would like, but enough. One fun little detail that you don't see very often are these bolts over here, and it's made for a leather strap. So you can shoulder the bike if you have to do some portage, if you're commuting, taking up the stairs, or doing some rough stuff and have to shoulder the bike. This one is nicely outfitted with some dynamo lighting. It runs internally through leg here and pops out down here. It also has another hole here so you can run a cable out for a rear light. So this is the rear light, and there is an exit port for the cable over here. Other really thoughtful touches are the routing. Here it's external cables for the shifters, but the rear brake does get partially internally routed. Goes in through the frame here, through this port, and pops out over here, making this area here pretty clean so you don't have three cables running down the down tube. Usually not a big fan of internal routing, but this is like tastefully done, and it is only one cable, thankfully. Looking at the fork, it's got, kind of like a nice lug crown. It has a bit of a curve, not quite a French flick, more of like a dog leg. The head tube is fairly simple, no head badge, just kind of just kind of a decal under some clear coat. Appreciate this is a slightly taller stack height on this bike, unlike, say, a Surly, which tend to be overly slammed for what they are. Okay, I told myself that this was just going to be a first impressions and not a full-on review, but just to give you some context, that is the frame. In terms of how it rides, it's really, really smooth. I think a huge part of that, of course, has to be from the tires. 650B by, big chunky like 47s, 48s. I know some will say 650B is dead just because it's out of current fashion with the bike industry now that they're obsessed with 32-inch bikes. Doesn't mean it stopped being like a good wheel and tire size. I've actually been riding lots of 700C bikes just to see which I prefer more. And after hopping on this just felt like home. It was nice and cushy with those big wide tires, whilst maintaining a fairly nimble front steering. And again, that is the big advantage of 650B. It'll handle like a road bike, but it'll give you the cushion of like a 29er, if you will. If you do the maths, the trail is in the low 60s, so again, in that neutral-ish road bike category, and it's just really smooth. The rear is 430, so again, stable, comfortable. If you're looking for a bike that feels really quick and accelerates really fast, this is not it. I feel like this bike definitely makes more sense as kind of like an endurance bike for long distance. It would be an awesome bike commuter bike. But if your goal or your intent is to keep up with like really spirited group rides that last like an hour or two and people are just hammering it, this is not that bike. But if you want to go out into the countryside, have those long miles, and be supremely comfortable, probably the biggest thing I like about this bike is it just fits me so well. I think there's lots of bikes like this. Again, I alluded to Surly, like the Midnight Special, although that is a little bit more tucked. But the problem with Surly, of course, is they have like weird dropouts. They just can't do things normal sometimes when you want them to. And the fit for me isn't great. They tend to have really low stacks and long reach. This has a higher stack and it just fits really well. I haven't weighed it, but it is not a lightweight. I think it's probably close to maybe 28, maybe 29, even 30 pounds. But despite that, this has to be one of my favorite bikes that I've ridden so far this year with drops. Just because it is so comfy, it's so plush, and the fit for me is perfect. In terms of climbing, I think it's geared a little too high for me personally. It's not the sprightliest climber, but it's no slouch either. It's just, it's smooth, it's consistent. It's that, kind of constant, reliable friend. Descending the spike feels great. With the big tires, it absorbs lots of bumps, gives you a good sense of stability. And again, because of that smaller wheel and tire diameter and kind of normalish trail with a bigger tire, it just feels like a neutral handling road bike while descending, while giving you the plushness and comfort of a bigger tire. So great descender as well. All around great bike. I feel like if there was a bike that this kind of reminds me of the most spiritually, it would probably be something like the Ritchie Montebello. Montebello, much more expensive bike. Speaking of price, as of now, I last checked, it's 1,500 Canadian or around 1,075 USD pre-tariff 2025. So I think this is also really good value. I feel like as Surly's have gotten more expensive, this kind of fills that price niche while offering lots of value. Again, the partially internally routed rear brake, the not weird dropouts, the higher stack. I feel like it's just a better package than a lot of Surly's out there on the market. All right, so I want to save some things for the actual full-on review. But yeah, that's my first impressions. Did one of our favorite road rides today, and this bike was just, chef's kiss. So great job to the folks over at Bassi Bikes and at Keystone. I think it's super functional. It's really well thought out. It's not pretending to be a race bike for the price point and the design, which I completely appreciate. I feel like some bikes like Surly and All Cities, like the stacks are too low and the geometry can be too aggressive, when honestly people that actually want to race are probably going to buy something else. This is a bike designed by people who know who this is for, and they've just done a really good job thinking it through. All right, we have to pack for Dresden, so if you want to see the cool custom bikes in Europe, be sure to subscribe, and if you like this content, please consider supporting, joining us on Patreon. That is the best way to do it. Gives us a budget, lets us travel, lets us buy components, and just take the time to make these videos. Totally appreciate it. You can join us on Patreon or become a YouTube member or pick up some merch if all that is too much commitment. And as always, keep the supple side down.